Hello, everyone, and welcome to Up Supercast, the only podcast that decided now is the perfect time to start an NBA podcast. I'm your host, Muzzy, and joining me today is Brandon.
I want to talk about E3 again.
Ills.
It's all fun and games, but cancellation has gotten out of control.
And Will, who is not hosting today.
Hello, nurse. Because I'm sick. That's why you're my nurse.
Do you
I'm
also have the coronavirus? Because Brandon had it last week, and Saf still has it.
Saf still has it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die.
No, looking at these symptoms for coronavirus, I have none of them.
Okay.
So
That's good. That's good. You know,
Damn.
Is it good?
I mean, you know...
shucks might be.
Will, like, if Will gets it, it's whatever, you know, but Will's family... I don't want Will's family to contract the disease.
That's true.
You know what
Pam
I'm
and
saying?
Ken are sweethearts.
Yeah. So I care about them very much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we didn't cancel the Up Supercast, at least.
No,
so.
we did not
The
cancel
one-
the Jump
the
Up
one thing-
Supercast. This is literally the one thing left. Because everything from the NBA to March Madness to Coachella, everything's getting canceled, including our favorite trade show, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3, will not be happening this year because of the coronavirus. Now, we've talked a lot about the failings of E3 this year. Surprisingly, it's not canceled because of those reasons.
Yeah. There was a lot of people calling saying E3 is dead, and it is now dead, but for a different reason than what I think anyone could have guessed.
Yep. So, yeah. I guess that's the first thing I want to talk about. So E3 will not be happening this year. In its place, though, so the ESA has said they want to do some sort of digital experience that they want to coordinate with the publishers. So that way we can still have some form of E3, so we can still get some game announcements and all that, right? And so I don't know exactly what the ESA is going to be doing, but we do know for a fact that Microsoft and Ubisoft will be doing digital experiences for E3. Of course, Microsoft and Ubisoft do press conferences every single year, right? We knew that they were going to be at the show. And yeah, they have confirmed, yes, we will be. We got announcements to do, so we're not just gonna, pack our bags. Yeah, they will be doing digital. So I guess first, I want to get you guys' thoughts on the craziness, I guess, of the coronavirus, and
Well,
and then we can go from there.
I mean, obviously we said this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I guess now, but this is like, everything is sort of being put on a hold, right? And E3, in the grand scheme of things, it is better to be safer than sorry, obviously. But it is interesting because this is going to affect basically every industry out there. People are working from home a lot more than they have been. A bunch of other stuff, schools are closing down, everything else. And that will have ripple effects for a while. Right, in terms of specifically video games, things are probably going to get delayed as a result, right? Things are probably going to be, manufacturing will be messed with, right? There's going to be just a lot of different strain that we won't see for a while, right? A small example of it, obviously, is back when there was the major tsunami and earthquake in Japan a couple of years back, I think 2013, right? Like Nintendo had to just take a break for basically 2 months, right? And just say, we don't have the ability to do active development because we're trying to recover from a crisis. And so that stuff's going to keep happening. E3 in specific, we can talk more about. But yeah, I mean, it's going to feel very weird. The whole summer is going to be very barren without it, potentially the Olympics, potentially, all manner of stuff not happening that we were expecting.
For example, while we're on the subject of Microsoft, or I guess about to be, like Microsoft has said, like, hey, our employees are going to be working from home for the next couple, who knows how long, right? And I imagine that kind of shifts, pipelines are being disrupted, right? And it's like, I mean, we have never seen anything like it, to be honest, like to this scale of what's going on right now.
In our lifetimes, yeah, for sure.
Disneyland closed, It's like, yeah.
That was the last thing, too. I mean, every major sporting event in America is basically done for the summer.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, one of the things that really got me thinking is, like, how you know, how much this is just going to affect the economy in general.
Mhm.
You know, you know, the major sporting events bring in, you know, a ton of money. Not just for the NBA, not just for the NHL. You know, it brings in a ton of money for everything around it. The hotels, the restaurants, you know, everything that is around that city that get profits off of those events are just going to be losing tons and tons of money. So, you know, the economy is really going to take a hit. It's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Just to think about that.
The whole travel industry is tanking right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we've entered this. I mean, this is going to be. It's not a fun podcast. Sorry, folks, but we entered the stock market entered the first bear market that it's had in 13 years, right? And essentially, not always, but that can often lead to a recession. And so that means, you know, video games are a frivolous expenditure. You know, that's a non-necessity.
God damn you.
Yeah, well, depending on who you ask. But it's going to be very interesting if suddenly we're going to be in this different, you know, thing where the economy's downturned. We're sort of, who knows where we'll be in a couple months, right? How these companies, you know, Microsoft might be out there with a $600 box in the middle of a new recession, and like that's going to be a weird situation for them.
It's going to be pretty weird. Now, of course, we are not experts on the economy or global pandemics.
No,
not at all.
I am. I actually have a double master's in both those things.
But good thing we have Bills on. But I did think it was just worth mentioning because, you know, outside of just E3, because, I mean, this is such a major event, right? And this will affect, it's seemingly going to affect every aspect of our lives, you know? So, it's But, so as it pertains to gaming, and I guess let's bring it specifically to E3 now. So, like I said, they're moving to digital. So Microsoft, they've done Inside Xboxes before.
Yes.
Right? I would not say it's a particularly great format.
If you're going to be doing your Series X, I mean, they've already done a lot of details, but if you're going to do your like final deep dive on like, here's the OS, here's the games, here's the price, through the very belabored format of the Inside Xbox, they sometimes take an hour worth of content and make it 3 hours. That thing might be 7 hours long. They're just if the ratio maintains itself, because good lord, they love to go long. So yeah, hopefully they'll tune that up, or just not use the Inside Xbox format and go with a more contained presentation.
I imagine surely they're gonna do something not Inside Xbox, right? Because I think Inside Xbox is a very poor I think it's a poor format in general, right? But especially when it comes to like your big console reveal, this is gonna be. And it's funny because Nintendo, right, has been doing these digital presentations for a while now, right? And clearly, you could see the improvements they've made over the course of the last 7 years, and so they've really kind of mastered the art of making this like digital presentation, right? But these companies are gonna be, including Ubisoft, they're gonna be new to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's gonna be a shift for them. I think it's like we've seen like state of plays, we've seen Inside Xbox, we see Square Enix once did a digital E3 presentation once, right?
Which was not great.
Yeah.
And it's not easy necessarily to like you can't really just take a conference and then just turn it into a video and expect it to voila, we got it, right?
There's something even weirder about someone doing like an E3 type of presentation, right, with that tone, without it being on a stage, right? Because at least with the stage, you're like used to it. He's talking to a crowd. Now it's like they're talking directly to you, but like in the weird, like, you know, robot tone that sort of permeates a lot of the game's presentations.
Yeah.
So, and it can feel really strange. I mean, Nintendo, like you said, right, 7 years they've been doing this. When the Switch, it came time, they did a stage presentation. This will be the first time that a console is actually fully unveiled, probably through a digital format only.
Because and while Sony won't be at E3, we can presume, considering no one is doing conferences right now, right? I think it's safe to assume that the PS5 will get a similar sort of digital reveal, and that's a different space. I mean, I don't think either of these companies were necessarily planning on that, right? But it is funny that like Nintendo, being the ones who kind of ushered in these digital presentations, are the only ones who seemingly, well, who knows how the next couple months go, but seemingly we'll be the only ones who actually did a live press conference before the console launched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild world we live in. Now, we do have some specific details on someone who was planning on having a big E3 presence, thanks to our good friend of the show, Jason Schreier.
I mean,
he definitely knows us.
I mean, imaginary friend of the show. Yeah.
No. We're good friends, okay?
I have a framed picture above my bed of Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
Touch it
I
every
can
morning.
believe
I wouldn't
that,
doubt
actually.
that.
Yeah.
So Jason Schreier wants us to know, hey, Warner Brothers was planning to do a press conference for the first time this year. Which, whoa, what's going on there, right? So Warner Brothers actually had a big presence at E3 planned, including, but not limited to, Warner Brothers Montreal's new Batman game that has been rumored forever.
They hinted at 8 months ago.
Yeah, it's been a long. Every event now, people are like, "Where's that game? Where's that game? Where's that game?" State of Plays have gone by. People asking about that. You know, the Game Awards have gone by. People asking about that. It's finally gonna show up. The Harry Potter game that was leaked 2 years ago. I wanna
Yeah,
say?
thereabouts. Sure.
Yeah, that we talked about on this very podcast.
Oh yeah, didn't we talk about it like with shrimp involved, or I forget the title. What the fuck?
I sincerely do not remember.
The title of the podcast was like Harry Potter versus anime shrimp or something like that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's a good memory. I just remember it was Walmart focus testing was the thing. There was just like some mall somewhere that they grabbed someone and they're like, "Hey, you want to show you this upcoming video game?" And they just recorded it with their phone, and that's how we saw it.
yeah, so that game that's been, you know, rumored for quite a while. I guess rumored is not the right word, maybe, because whatever. But, like, you know, we've kind of known about it for a while, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to show up, or was supposed to show up at this press conference. And Rocksteady's game, which, talk about people asking about this forever. I feel like it's been like 3 years now where every single E3, every single Game Awards, people have been asking, where's Rocksteady's game? Where's Rocksteady's game? Mm-hmm. And was gonna show up at this E3 press conference. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's safe to assume that if they were planning a press conference, that they'll follow Microsoft and Ubisoft's lead here and do their own digital experience, right?
Sure.
But that's a big slate. What do you guys think about, I mean, Batman, Rocksteady, and Harry Potter? You know, that's a... What are your thoughts?
I mean...
God damn, Arkham Knight came out in 2015.
It's been 5 years, dude. I think, at least for me personally, it's weird, right? Because these are all games that, like, you assume Batman and Harry Potter are both huge IPs, right? Surely they're going to be doing something with them. But they've been gone for a while, right? 2015 for Batman, and Harry Potter's never really got that, like, huge, big budget attempt at a video game. And so, I mean, if I'm Warner Brothers, I'm pissed, right? You're just like, man... This was the year, right? We were going to do it, but they're all gone. All those games have the potential. I mean, Rocksteady, I'm very interested in, right? Because, I mean, you can look at the list where we put Arkham Asylum. We think very highly of that game, right? But by Arkham Knight, I was like, I want them to try something besides Batman. And this will almost certainly be that, because we now know Warner Brothers Montreal is the one that's making the new Batman game. And so that's the thing I'm most interested in on an inherent level, but I mean, I loved Harry Potter growing up, and I would love a game that was good. And I like Batman, so like hopefully Warner Brothers Montreal can pick up that mantle. And keep going.
Do you think the Rocksteady game is a licensed game?
I think yes.
Probably.
Because like Warner Brothers output almost not entirely, but almost entirely does consist of licensed games. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like Mortal Kombat's kind of the one big exception when it comes to their AAA games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's the case, like, what's a Warner Brothers license that you would want to see Rocksteady working on?
I mean, a lot of things have been thrown around. I want to say Jason Schreier years ago had already basically said it's not Superman.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank fucking God for that.
Superman
years ago it was like
interesting.
it was a team up game. It was like a team was what they were saying. So people but it wasn't like
Suicide
Justice
Squad.
League.
Yeah,
Scooby-Doo.
Suicide
Scooby-Doo,
Squad
baby.
has been a thing that's been,
Said a lot. And
it's
Teen
weird because
Titans
we've
was
heard
one.
Suicide Squad being done by other teams, not Rocksteady. Like I want to say WB Montreal was at one point rumored to be doing that.
Yeah.
But now I think kind of people have settled back around to, maybe Rocksteady's doing Suicide Squad game. Warner Brothers was definitely interested in
Looney
doing
Tunes.
that kind of game.
Yeah. A big bunch of Bugs Bunny game.
Yeah, imagine.
Big Chungus. The game.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to assume it's a DC game, though. I do think it's going to involve DC
Yeah.
Comics in some way,
Aquaman.
Yeah,
Teen Titans.
Dennis the Menace.
I mean,
Teen Titans,
Titans.
I would actually be interested in.
Yeah, Teen Titans is, I think, what I'm personally rooting for, right?
Yeah, that would actually be cool. Sarcasm aside, that would actually be sweet as fuck.
Yeah, and so that's personally what I would like to see. And,
I mean,
go on.
other ones that aren't, because you said probably is going to be in DC, right? But if you were looking outside of it, I would think it would be cool if they could make like we're getting a Matrix reboot, and like the Matrix, what if the Matrix got a good video game? Like there's a bunch of huge IPs that Warner Brothers owns. They're just like, man, what if they got like, this is actually just like a big attempt at this, right? And so I hope that they're willing to go beyond that.
Well, Warner Media secretly owns a lot more than you think they do.
Lethal Weapon 4.
I know.
No, they're making a new Lethal Weapon movie. I mean, even though Lethal Weapon 5 and 6 have already been done.
Already, of course.
But they're making another one, so.
Yeah. All right,
And then, yeah.
Lethal Weapon 0.
Warner Brothers, hopefully we still get an E3 something from them, right?
Yeah.
I hope so.
I mean, these games
Space
will be
Jam.
getting announced at some point anyway, I imagine.
Yeah.
Right?
I just want it all at the same time.
Yeah, that's
you know?
it would be nice to get all these things over with at once, though,
It's easy to clear your calendar when you know when it's going to be,
Yes.
Yeah, I've already accepted I'll never make it to E3. E3 is going to be dead anyway if I ever did try to make it there. So it's like, I still want that info dump every June for a weekend where everybody just is like, here you go, here's all the new shit, right? Because, I watch it online anyway.
So
I think the
here's
tradition
one,
of it's going to outlast the actual show,
Maybe. And so I did want to ask one last question about this topic before we move on. Do you think, with the convention being canceled, with everyone kind of being forced to do their own digital events, though still coordinated presumably around E3 time, right?
Yeah.
With the ESA, do you think companies will look at this year and be like, we got just as much as exposure as we usually do. Do we really need E3? Which, coupled with all the kind of ailings and troublings that E3 and the ESA has had, do you think this possibly expedites the process of E3 actually truly being dead?
Yes.
I think it's very possible.
I mean, this is
many...
the crucible. This is it.
Yeah.
Like, this will be the test of. I mean, one, the E3 mantle, right? Like just because essentially right now if you're associating with the ESA, you're not paying necessarily, but you're only doing it to get that thing of E3 conference put on your title, right? Which may not mean much. And then also these companies spend millions of dollars on E3 every year.
Yeah.
And I think that they might look at the cost, like you said, look at the view count and see that it's not that different.
Because presumably, no matter what, this year is going to be significantly cheaper, right? In terms of for like Microsoft and Ubisoft to produce these digital videos rather than going, doing these big old press conferences, renting out a theater room, doing these big old booths, setting up these demo stations. Like, maybe that cost isn't worth it. Maybe that's what they'll come to the conclusion of this year. Who knows? But yeah, who would have thought this would be what kind of really truly starts the downfall of E3?
E3 dodged one bullet and then had another. Like
I was wondering,
right
do you
behind the
guys
first
think? Do you guys think that because we all watch it online every year and we watch like everything, like I'll sit through all the bullshit. Do you think that it will make it more bearable if it's all online presentations for us who just watch it all online anyway? Like we won't have to sit through like as much
the pre-show,
like agonizing shit.
I mean, so there's definitely just inherently going to be less fluff, right?
Yeah.
But a digital video can be just as grating, I think.
Sure.
I think that there's definitely can be lulls. I think, I mean, again, I don't remember what year it was, but Square Enix had tried once to do like a digital video for E3 once, and it wasn't boring. I mean, it wasn't like painful necessarily, but it was completely pointless.
Yeah,
right?
I felt like there was no reason to have watched it, right?
And I think there's definitely that risk of like, oh well, I just wasted 20 minutes of my life. You know?
At the very least, I mean, at least they're guaranteed to be shorter, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I don't.
If they find a way to
think
make them longer, something went wrong.
Yeah. Because let's point at Microsoft, right? Microsoft traditionally goes above 90 minutes every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to go for 90 minutes this year, you know. But on the flip side, though, I do think Microsoft tends to make a pretty good E3 show where I don't mind that 90 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a 40-minute Inside Xbox, I want to claw my eyes out.
and so you know, the presentation can sometimes matter as much as the length does. I am curious though, because I think one benefit of E3 in the era that we live in is that there's just so much a wealth of gameplay footage, right? Versus 10 years ago. There's just, you know, both officially and non-officially, right? Like Nintendo obviously has the Treehouse, right? Which is just a thing that I love throughout that whole week, right? But even companies like EA did like a whole, like after they finished their conference last year, which wasn't great, they had a whole separate demo for what became Jedi Fallen Order, right? And that was like very nice just to have that scheduled there for you, right? And so I wonder, and obviously all the different press people that are all doing demos and giving impressions. And so that's the thing that I think I will miss the most about E3 going digital. But I think another question. So we obviously we talked about the Game Awards a couple months back, right? And how the Game Awards actually gets bigger viewers than E3 conferences do. And I think a non-small factor is that the Game Awards are on the weekend. Do you think that they should start to free themselves from the idea of like, well, because the reason we always had conferences on Monday and then Tuesday was because that's when the show floor opens. And then people come and they're playing the games you've announced, right? Do you think that they should maybe take a look at like altering the schedule for E3 to make it where more people could watch more easily without having to take time off work?
Yeah, I mean, so Microsoft's already kind of moved to Sunday, right? But everyone else has been doing Monday still, Tuesday, whatever. I think maybe, moving. I mean, you're definitely not reliant on. You could do E3 week without being necessarily now reliant on, I gotta do my thing before the show floor opens, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is a big benefit to a lot of these people, and I think they can shift accordingly. I mean, one of the nice things about a digital presentation in particular, I think that Nintendo has realized, is that it's much easier to set a video presentation and tailor it to different time zones all at once, you know, and different languages all at once, right? And so you can do because like Sony, right? Sony's E3 conferences have been notorious for just being a god-awful time for Europe, but that's because they have to do it Monday night, because they have to do it before, just because of the way the scheduling works, right? And now with these digital presentations and kind of more time being freed up, I think more of these companies can tailor these times to more, it kind of works for a global audience and not just an American audience, which is important, right? I think that's very important. So I think, that would be a pretty good thing. Okay, any last thoughts before?
07 in chat. Salute. E3's dead.
Yeah.
You're breathtaking.
You're breathtaking.
So, besides E3, though, we do got some other news, believe it or not. As you know, a lot of sports things have been canceled, right?
Yeah.
But sports video games are still around, don't you worry.
The one way to enjoy
more than ever, because 2K now has the license to make football games again. However, before you get too excited, it is for non-simulation games.
This makes me more excited, though.
Well, sure, yeah. But it will not be a competitor to Madden, right? However, they can make more arcadey style games. I'm thinking in the style of NFL Blitz, perhaps, right? Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I mean, excited when I first read the headline, and then confused when I read the rest. So I don't know what to expect. You know, very weird that this is I don't know what's going on with their contract, right? Because I know EA had the exclusive rights for NFL games. So I don't know if they have made a new contract with them. Like, did it expire? Like, what is going on here? And like, are they not allowed to make a simulation type game? I don't get it. I would have liked to see them have a true competitor to Madden because I mean, fuck Madden now. It's just awful. And I want the best football games possible. I want to be into a football game again. I just can't, you know. And I don't know if this is gonna help, but I don't know. Let's see. We'll see.
I mean, I'm not. Again, I wouldn't get your hopes up for this being the Madden competitor, but
No, I'm not.
NFL Blitz was pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty fun game.
NFL Blitz is a fucking awesome game. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so something in that style would be pretty fun. Recently 2K, well, they didn't originally do it, but they did buy out the company that did NBA Playgrounds, right? Which is a more arcadey style basketball game. Though I hope it's not those guys because they're like, it wasn't great.
Could have been better.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm optimistic that hey, I could use a fun football game.
Yeah.
I could.
I mean,
couldn't.
I'm very curious as to, like Brandon said, the contract, right? Whether or not this was the thing they were forced to do or they decided to do. Because there's, in more recent years, a lot of the sports leagues have had one company exclusively had the rights, and that's only, this is one of the first times that's shifted in any major way. And I'm curious if it's, because the only other comparison point off the top of my head is like Pro Evolution Soccer and FIFA, right? They were both able to do soccer for different, but they were both doing major soccer games, even if obviously FIFA is a specific league. But I wonder if, because with time we've just seen PES's share shrink and shrink, right? It still does well, clearly, right? Because soccer's huge. And then FIFA grow and grow. And I wonder if they looked at Madden and said, we just don't want to have to try to play catch up in that same league, like in that same space. And so we're going to start off by doing this other side thing, right? Not necessarily side thing, but it's just different, more arcadey version of it. And then,
I mean, if I had to guess, of course, none of us really know what's going on here, right? But if I had to guess, I think the reason they are doing arcade stuff is because EA does have an ironclad agreement with the NFL,
Yeah.
I think that, but also, making a new simulation sports game is hard, right? We see it with NBA Live year after year, right? Where they constantly, EA is trying to get back some of the share they had in basketball games that 2K has, because 2K just completely dominates that now, right? But time after time, they cannot get it right. They have tried so many iterations of NBA Live and it just hasn't worked for well over a decade now, and yeah, so that could be part of it. I personally, though, I do think, if I had to guess, I think EA and Madden, EA and the NFL still have just a exclusivity agreement because EA pays a lot of money for that, a lot of money to have that exclusively. And I can't imagine the NFL wants to let that big chunk of change go, right?
Yeah.
But this is a way to get around to make some more football games, right? Increase the brand awareness even more.
Well, if 2K is serious about this, they should go to the real football league, the XFL, and start making XFL.
Well, the XFL isn't even going to finish one season.
Well, that's because of not their problems this time. It was not their fault.
I know. Damn, that sucks though,
Yeah.
right? Because they're just canceling the season outright.
Couldn't happen to a better guy.
VKM.
I mean, what are they going to do? They could just play the games with nobody in attendance. They do that anyway.
Hey-o.
I'm just kidding, XFL. You're cool.
Ghost of Tsushima has a release date. You may remember this game. It is the final, essentially. Who knows if they may announce more. Sony does tend to have some first-party games that come out after their new system comes out for their old one. But as of right now, this is the final PlayStation 4 game published by Sony. It's coming out June 26th. And while, it's just a release date, so there's not much to talk about there. But I do want to talk about generally just, this is it for PS4,
Well, there was an accompanying trailer.
Huh? Yeah, there was an accompanying trailer. Yeah.
Which, it was a story trailer. I guess if you don't want to have the most vague of story details spoiled for you, you can skip the last 90 seconds. But spoilers, you're a samurai and then you almost died and now you're a ninja. It's basically it, which is what we sort of thought. So, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, so personally, I watched it earlier and I didn't get much out of it, but, whatever. not a game I was ever particularly interested in, so I'm not going to be like, oh, this game sucks, right?
Yeah.
However, so it's coming out in June, and so we had Dreams come out last month, Predators coming out next month, Last of Us is coming out in May, which I'm surprised that Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima are coming out so close to each other, right?
Yeah.
You would think they'd want to space them out more.
Well,
so number one, what do you kind of think of this final year of the PlayStation, and maybe just kind of overall, what are your thoughts on the PS4's first party output, I guess? But also, number two, do you think this means a PS5 reveal is coming after June?
Yes, after June is very nebulous. Like all the rest.
well, I guess
very
it's like
nebulous,
yeah,
but-
happened before that, while there's still games coming out.
Yeah, I'd say it's very possible it comes after June. I'm excited for The Last of Us, and I think Ghost of Tsushima still looks really good. So yeah, I think it's a pretty decent year for PS4.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's a strong year to go out on, right? Like, that is a strong line. Oh, and Iron Man VR is also coming out in May, I should mention. So, like, I mean, this first half of the year, they have a game almost every month.
Yeah.
Like, they do. It's a pretty good lineup from them.
Better than Nintendo.
And hell, this is not from Sony, but Final Fantasy VII Remake is a full exclusive, at least for when it comes out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so PS4, it's going out on a bang, right? It is like a lot of high quality games still coming to the system.
Yeah, it's
Unless
interesting.
all those games suck.
Well, yeah, maybe. I would be shocked, but maybe. Yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously Last of Us got delayed. It was originally going to be February, right? So and when it got delayed, we had heard that Ghost was always sort of penciled for June. So clearly, the question was, will they move Ghost? And they didn't, which is fine. I think that both those games can sustain themselves, especially with the PS4 having the install base that it does. But yeah, I mean, I think the last 6 months of PS4 before PS5 stuff starts heating up is sort of indicative of the whole generation, right? Which sort of is a double-edged sword, which is that, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Dreams, and Last of Us 2 are all games we've known about for 3 years now, right? Some of them at a minimum. Some of them are 5 years, and one of them is 7 years. And so, the first couple of years of the PS4, there wasn't the big exclusive that, like, I think you could look at the mass market and say, this is it, right? Knack was not that, Drive Club wasn't that. Even Bloodborne, which was an incredible video game, right? It's not like a mass market hit, right? But then Uncharted 4, and then from that point onwards, things like God of War, Spider-Man, and obviously I think Last of Us is going to do amazing, and Ghost is going to do really well. Like Sony became the premier first party publisher for like these really big tentpole releases that, like, they're going to spend all the time and all the money to make sure that they're going to pump them out and be good, right? Whereas, which is interesting because that's sort of the opposite tact of Nintendo, not in that Nintendo's making bad games, but in that Nintendo now plays their cards super close to the chest and doesn't announce a game basically unless it's coming out within the year, unless it's like Breath of the Wild 2, right? Which is why, like, it's interesting to see both of these two companies sort of go down these different paths throughout the same generation.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, what Breath of the Wild 2 and Metroid Prime 4, I think, are the only two that I can think of where they did that.
And Bayonetta. But for the most part, yes. Like, Nintendo's kind of, this gen especially, has kept their cards close to the chest, right?
Yeah, really I honestly prefer that, because then you don't have to see the same game like 3 years in a row at E3 or every press conference they have, and you just want the damn thing to come out now.
Sure.
And so I definitely prefer that style.
But I think it's also the positions each of the companies are in, right? Nintendo is sort of more well known for having, the best-selling games on Nintendo platforms are almost always the first-party titles, right? Yeah. With Sony, traditionally, it's not. That's actually changed more this gen than in previous gens, where there is actually more first-party representation on the best-selling list. And so Sony sort of is in the position where they can take the time and do smaller and bigger because they have way more third-party going on, right? And Switch has a better third-party situation than a lot of previous consoles, but it's still Nintendo sort of carrying the year most times.
Yeah, and I think that's just to hit home. Like, it's just it's a difference in strategy, right?
Yeah.
Of just based on where those platforms are. Like Will said, like Nintendo, I would argue, doesn't really have the luxury to announce a game that far out like that, because they have more of a responsibility to constantly keep you engaged with brand new first party games, right? Whereas Sony can dangle Last of Us Part 2 as, look, we don't know when it's going to come out, but you know it's going to be great, and you have all these great games coming in the meantime, right?
Yeah.
Your Call of Duties, your Grand Theft Autos, your whatever, right? But we want you to buy a PS4 and get those multi-platform games on PS4 because you know that these big tentpole first-party releases are on the way. You know, Sony wants you to buy a system so that way you buy Call of Duty on their platform, right?
Yeah.
And I think announcing Last of Us, announcing Ghost of Tsushima, announcing whatever, right? I think it's just like, hey, like, look, again, you know, we don't know when it's gonna come out, but A, you know, gives you a reason to buy the system, and B, you know these games are gonna be quality. You know these games are gonna be quality. I mean, like, honestly, besides like Days Gone,
I was just gonna say Days Gone is like the one.
It's like it's like the one big AAA game that they released. That's
well,
kind of
depending on
done,
how you feel, Detroit
right?
is
But-
become human. Depending on
Sure,
how you feel.
sure, but even Detroit reviewed well, right? Like, it still reviewed well
In the 80s, yeah.
And you know, Spider-Man was a big deal. God of War was a big deal. Horizon was a big deal. You know, they've been on fire this generation, and I think that basically since 2016, since Uncharted 4 came out, they've at least had one or two big releases that, like, you know, truly, like, everyone is talking about them. You know, they sell super well, they review super well. I mean, this is the generation where Sony released their best-selling first-party game ever, right? In Spider-Man. And so, yeah, I guess I just kind of want to talk about overall. Like, I mean, PS4 first-party, Sony as a publisher, as a software publisher, I think is the best it's ever been, and I think that I think it bodes well for people to have confidence in the PS5.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the other edge of that sword is is that, like, Naughty Dog's putting out their game this year, right? Like, you know, same for Sucker Punch, same for Media Molecule. So they won't be in probably the first 2 years of the PS5, right? But
Yes.
that'll be interesting to see. You know, I mean, but like Guerrilla, right? Horizon rose their stock a ton this generation, right? That's one of the, actually, I think, the bigger stories of this whole go round, right? They now own Insomniac, who made Spider-Man, like you said. Like, both Microsoft and Sony have actually secretly built up. Sony's closed studios this go around, but the studios that are there have increased their prominence in a really big way, right? It's going to be interesting to see how PS5 plays out. Do we want to talk about the bad news related to Sony first party, though? The other Jason Schreier thing from the week?
The crunch culture with this thing?
With Last of Us.
Yeah.
Essentially, just, I mean, you can read more about it, but big in-depth thing about sort of how, even with The Last of Us 2, they set out at the beginning to not have crunch, right? We want to have less crunch than we have before, because Naughty Dog was notorious for having it for a long time, but how it's still happening again. How despite, you know, the best intentions of mice and men, people have been crunching for more on The Last of Us than even Uncharted 4.
That seems insane to me, because it's been announced like so long ago.
Yeah.
Everybody knew this was a thing that was coming.
Well, yeah, and without getting too much into specifics, there was a former animator who worked at Naughty Dog, right? Who had a tweet chain that was pretty interesting. That was essentially, the main thesis in his thing was crunch sort of is a short-term gain for long-term harm, because now the problem is that Naughty Dog has this incredible reputation, but also has this, you know, in terms of the games they put out, but has this is known for being so crunch heavy that they have trouble hiring new people, and their senior staff is leaving. And so suddenly, the actually Last of Us 2, I mean, he's in his words, he said this. I don't know enough to say if he's right or wrong, but like Last of Us 2 could have come out, 6 months earlier, but they just had to keep bringing on new people who had to keep learning the process, where if they had just been able to retain their talent by not making them, go through mental breaks because of having to do 60-hour weeks for months at a time, that the games could have come out actually faster, right? By avoiding crunch culture.
Why do you think that happened? Like presumably they had enough time to get this done without crunch, right?
Who's to say? So a big part of the article, I would say, like right at the beginning, is that 70% of the designers who worked on Uncharted 4 do not work at Naughty Dog anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Which means after Uncharted 4, between Uncharted 4 and Last of Us Part 2, and maybe even during Last of Us Part 2, a lot of people left, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people left. And because of that, like it just kind of led to this, I guess, cycle of, okay, well, we gotta hire on this new staff, they gotta learn the ropes, and then but then like they're having a hard time hiring people in the first place because of all the not rumors, but like what people are telling you from their experiences working there, right? They're like, hey, They're telling their buddies, hey, don't work here, right? Do not take a job here. This is not great. Mm-hmm. And I guess I want to use this as a point to maybe talk about, because Naughty Dog last generation was the premier Sony studio, right? Mm-hmm. I truly wonder if that will continue to be the case, though, right? Well, no, but the reason I ask this is because, just because the stock of Guerrilla, the stock of Insomniac, the stock of Sucker Punch has risen so much lately, right? I guess Sucker Punch TBD, but whatever. But number two, like, again, if they are having serious trouble hiring people, if they're having serious trouble, like, even shipping games, right? I kind of wonder about the place of Naughty Dog when it comes to Sony overall.
Well, I would say there's two different parts, right? Because I think the issue of shipping games isn't necessarily an issue, right? But the thing is, part of the article and in that tweet chain they talk about that there's a culture of perfectionism at Naughty Dog, right? That they are aware of the reputation and they they want to be industry leaders. And that's a good desire to have, especially when you are known for that, right? But the problem is that turns into every animation you need 3 passes at, basically, was the way that the guy described it, right? He was just speaking within his experience, right? That things would take 2 or 3 times as long as it would in another place he worked because there was such that high bar, right? And it's like, there was a quote, I forget who it was specifically at Naughty Dog, that was sort of like, it's very hard to make a game of the year and not crunch, right? Which, whether or not that's true is, I'm not in game development. I don't want to speak one way or the other. But at some point you have to look and say, is this game getting game of the year worth it if we're losing these people as soon as that game's done? And that's the difficult thing. And when do we start to say it's okay if not everything is this, polished to a sheen? Because if that happens, and it's because people get better quality of life, we as like consumers have to probably be willing to look at that and say it's worth it, right? That like, maybe her animation won't flow as easily in the middle of a fight, but like, does that matter that much in the long run if it adds on, takes years off someone's life when they're working on it? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think the way to fix that, I guess, is to manage your time a little bit more properly, right? Like,
sure,
delay the game if it has to be delayed. Like,
sure. Well, but that's part of it, right? That's part of, and I think Schreier goes through that with the article. A lot of people assume, and kind of a lot of this news came out I forget what kind of prompted this, but a couple weeks back, this was kind of a hot topic too, that like a lot of people assume that delaying a game means, oh, okay, thank goodness the developers can take a rest, or they don't have to work so crazy anymore. But what actually ends up happening, like, and I want to use The Last of Us as a specific example. The Last of Us got moved from February to May, right? Uh-huh. All that did was mean they were crunching for an extra 3 months. That was the actuality of it. And so sometimes it's not just as simple as, oh, we'll just delay the game. Right?
Well, if you delay the game, then don't crunch. You have to put the two things together. Just don't keep crunching for the rest of the time. Sure,
I know, but I think that it's like, I think it's hard for us to make that judgment call of like, I will say, like, I think that the game industry needs better working conditions, right?
That's some unions.
They need some unions, yeah, like for real, But like on the flip side of things, I do think it's hard for us to be like, well, why don't they just do this or why don't they just do that? When we don't really have that first-hand experience to be like, oh, well, maybe it's not so easy, right?
Well,
and I think
yes,
part
but
of
then-
it is like the intrinsic culture of the company.
It's hard
and,
to
you know,
steer when the ship's in motion. It's hard to steer it. You know, like it takes a long time, and so.
In a certain sense, then we can't criticize anything if you go by that.
Well, no, I don't want
mean-
to say that. I'm saying offering specific solutions is maybe not as easy as it seems. You know what
I
I'm saying?
fully acknowledge that
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
the credentials to,
Yeah.
pinpoint the exact problem, but it seems like this is a time management issue rather than anything else.
There's clearly a problem, right? That's the thing. Like, and so like, you know, like even though you can say you can understand how it gets to these positions, it doesn't mean it's still not a problem. And like, and that's I mean, if it's not, you know, if you can't even say that it's not harming yourself at this point, right? Like it's harming it's harming you know, the games that you're making and the people that are making them, and that's a lose-lose, right?
And at some point, like the people are just not going to want to work for Naughty Dog, and their quality is going to go down.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, presumably. I mean, we'll see, of course, right? But yeah, like I think that's a safe bet. Is that,
yeah.
like, if things are truly as bad as the way like this article is describing, right? Like I think.
I mean, I think Last of Us 2 will still be an incredible video game. It'll have it, but it'll be incredible because of the fact that a lot of people had to give up a lot of time, and that's the hard reality.
And I think the future of the company is gonna be interesting to watch. I guess to see where kind of they go from here. But one little extra bit of Naughty Dog news we have, actually, speaking of The Last of Us. HBO greenlit a Last of Us TV show for, presumably for their, I guess it's just going to be on HBO then, right? So, like, which means it'll also be on HBO Max and whatever. It is going to be in conjunction with the people, or at least someone who made
one of the showrunners.
Chernobyl
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that is a show that got a lot of buzz, got a lot of positive feedback, right? So seemingly it's in good hands. And Last of Us is one of those shows. I mean, one of those games, right? That people like. Oh well, I really liked it for the story. So presumably it could translate really well to this format, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very easily translatable into like a TV show.
So you know, I'm looking forward to that for sure. Also, kind of, it's funny, we're in this space, right, where, like, hey, the Sonic movie was really successful, right? Detective Pikachu maybe didn't do to expectations, but it was successful, right?
The Witcher.
Huh?
The Witcher. It was Netflix's biggest premiere ever for Netflix.
Yeah, the biggest premiere for Netflix original. Just think about that, considering the scale of things that we've had on Netflix, right? That, The Witcher got to be that big, right? I think a lot of video game
Castlevania is on season 3.
3. Yeah. And so a lot of these video game adaptations are doing better than ever. I think it's kind of outdated at this point, right? To be like, oh, hey, well, video game adaptations suck, right? It's kind of an outdated take nowadays.
There's the Monster Hunter movie looming. It's still there. Never forget. But, yeah, I think that like HBO and Netflix are really good fits for things like Witcher and for Last of Us, right? Because oftentimes the thing you would always typically get with a game was movies, right? And movies would always have the problem of we're truncating these games that are typically 20 hours into an hour and a half story, and we're like kind of translating them, but then we're changing stuff, right? Where like I think that when you have a series that can go however many episodes you want it to go, you can sort of dictate the pace and introduce the world in a more effective way and give arcs to these characters in a more reasonable manner.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the news for this week. But of course, we cannot end a podcast without the list.
The list!
So, check out the paste pin in the description below so you can kind of see so you can follow along, because the list, we're going to be adding a game to the list where it's not a best of list, but we add a game and rank it amongst every other game we've ever added, right? And today it is my turn. Last week, I should say, we added BioShock.
We did.
Which got pretty decently higher than I would have liked personally.
Suck it.
Number 30. But
you weren't here.
I was here. Yeah.
Well, even if you were, your opinion didn't matter.
Yeah, clearly. But speaking of crunch culture, there's another studio well known for this, and that's Rockstar.
Oh.
And so I would like to add Grand Theft Auto 4.
I knew it was coming. I fucking knew it.
Looming. So Grand Theft Auto 4, if you don't know, is one of the highest rated games on Metacritic, period. Right? It's at least in top 4, top 2, I think. I don't remember exactly where. But it is a 97, tied with Grand Theft Auto 5, Breath of the Wild, and a couple Mario games. And when it came out, it was getting rave reviews. It was like, this is next generation, Came out on the PS3 and 360, I should mention. And I guess later PC. This was the first HD Grand Theft Auto game. However, personally speaking, I do not like this game. and to me, after Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, right, and I had a blast with Grand Theft Auto 3, I had a blast with Vice City, blast with San Andreas. I think while this game was a technical showpiece for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, I think gameplay-wise, it felt like a step down. And yes, Liberty City looks great. The attention to detail in the worlds that Rockstar creates is so, unparalleled, right? But that said, I don't think this game plays very well. And I think in a sandbox game like Grand Theft Auto, that's kind of mostly what I care about, Is am I having fun just fucking around in this game, essentially, And for me, the answer was no. However, I should add one quick thing. This game did get 2 large-scale expansions in The Ballad of Gay Tony and
The Lost and the Damned.
The Lost and the Damned. I never forget. I never remember the title of that one. And those I actually did like, I should say.
Talking about this game, right? Well, I guess we should. Do we want to lump those in?
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can buy them separately.
It's part of the. We're not
doing that
It is part of the Grand Theft Auto 4.
Okay,
experience.
so we'll lump those in. GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 2, I think, have a similar origin point from the brain of the maker, right? Which is you have this Red Dead Redemption 1, right? It's a cowboy simulator. There's some stuff, but it's very much it's the fantasy version of a cowboy, right?
Yeah.
GTA 1, 3, and all that PS2 trilogy was all we got kind of there in San Andreas. It was the half step of we're gonna go from sort of the goofiness of what it's like to be a guy running around blowing up the city to Nico Bellic is a gangster and it kind of sucks and the world's pretty dreary and the people that surround him kind of stink, right? It's got that vibe of listen, you're not supposed to be having fun all the time. The cars that are beat up jalopies we're gonna make drive like trash because they're supposed to be trash, right? And how much that goes for you is very up to personal tastes, right? And I get if you look and say this is doo-doo, right? I'm here to play a video game. You can do all those things while making a fun game, right? And I think Red Dead Redemption 2 has the same thing of we're gonna add a bunch of meters and you have to make sure to eat and to sleep and to do all these other things, right? And whether or not that resonates with you is gonna be very down to personal taste.
And I think even more damning to this game, just personally speaking, is I felt like it didn't play great back in 2008. I especially don't feel that way in 2020,
Sure.
I don't think the game's particularly aged very well,
Did you play it in 2020?
I played it sometime in 2016-ish, which is not that long, closer to 2008 than 2020. Closer to 2020 than 2008.
I will say you played it more recently than I have, but
Now I
haven't played this game in a long time.
I do remember Nico being a fucking drag. He has
I didn't
very,
care
very
for
little
the
personality.
story or the characters much.
Yeah.
The characters are all jerks. There's not likable ones,
Yeah.
And I didn't like that all the side characters kept fucking calling me. Shut the fuck up.
He wants to go bowling. Roman.
Listen, Roman is great. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, and I think that Ballad of Gay Tony especially is sort of them acknowledging that we probably went too far this way,
Yeah.
And then GTA 5 it sort of goes back to you're doing bank heists and it's way more in that goofy side of things.
Yeah, GTA 5's friggin' awesome.
I think GTA 5. I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna hold my tongue on it, but I do think it's a far better game than this game. And so where would I put GTA 4? Because I guess I get
Be your first blush.
first. I personally speaking, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of pushback here. I would put it in the area of. You know, I'm gonna shoot for my heart here.
Jesus Christ, the build up.
I'm already doing the blinking guy face.
I would put it below Pikmin 2.
What the fuck? Where is that?
106.
106.
Which is right below 3D Land, which is actually not as crazy as I thought you were gonna go with the way you were building it up.
Oh, sure, I could have gone lower, but no. I mean, I will say, I think that the Rockstar games, every single Rockstar game, is an incredible feat. You know, it is.
They're landmark things for a reason, partially because of crunch culture. But like, I get it. Here's a question.
Yeah.
Xenoblade Chronicles X.
I like Xenoblade Chronicles X more than I like this game.
It has to be
because
above Xenoblade.
I like exploring that open world more than I do like exploring the world of GTA 4.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but exploring Xenoblade is a pain in the ass until you get the flying skull. It's so fucking annoying.
Yeah, but at least the movement feels much better than in fucking GTA 4. Okay?
Well, I
Where
mean, the
you're
movement doesn't help you much when you're fighting enemies.
Where you're a
that, like,
slog and just like.
I mean, I don't. You know, we talk about the gameplay. Obviously, that's important in a sandbox game, right? But and I think GTA 5 strikes the balance the best, right, of this long term. But I think that there is something neat about how much of the city is now in the game that's not related to running around and shooting people, right? That there's that, even though they inundate you with those side activities to make sure you don't miss them, right? Like the fact that there is all these different activities. There's the comedy clubs you can go to where there's multiple sets of comedy recorded, right, by different actual comedians that you can go listen to.
That just feels like nothing to me.
No,
Like,
I think
it's good that
I
it
think when
feels
you're
like
presenting an approximatation of a city, that's
sure,
important,
I mean,
right?
but like.
That's something to me adds a lot of character.
It's not important to the actual game.
Hey.
Like it's
No,
not.
I don't know.
I mean, to my experience playing the game, I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was personally invested in America's Next Top Hooker, and I don't know about you. But
Amen, brother. I mean, the GTA writing's a separate problem.
Yeah. I mean, I called it a feat for a reason, right? Because, like, just the scale of, like, the world they built, and I don't just mean, like, how it looks, but just the way it feels lived in. Like, it's a real place, right? Is unparalleled. I think that, like, I cannot think of many games off the top of my head that are so rich with detail in life that the way that Grand Theft Auto games are, and in particular, I would say Grand Theft Auto 4, you know?
I don't disagree with any of that.
In that regard, it is a step up from the PS2 trilogy, right?
Yeah. I think it was.
But again, my problem is to still bring it down enough to where I want it below, say, Pikmin 2, and definitely below Xenoblade Chronicles X. And I don't like Xenoblade Chronicles X.
I don't. I mean, I would put it in like the low 60s.
Yeah,
for me,
that's where it should go.
Like I was thinking under Silent Hill 2.
I was thinking that too, because I think both of them don't play the best in 2020, right? But I think that I do like the underlying elements of like Silent Hill 2. I feel like there's more to dig under as well, right? Like Rockstar games always have the problem for me. Even though I just praised all that stuff, it's super wide, but it can be a little shallow, right?
Okay, hear me out.
Can we put it under Danganronpa?
I would like it below Stardew Valley at least. Hear me out. Stardew Valley, also a simulation game.
Okay, all right.
All right.
You're not getting me to do this, and if I'm not doing it, then I don't know if anyone is.
No, come on. Stardew Valley is a better game than Grand Theft Auto 4. I will not hear otherwise.
But I think it's
Not
better
even-
than Kid Icarus, Harmless, and Uncharted, Beautiful Joe, and Castle Crashers.
I mean, I disagree with all that.
I know. You wanted it 20 spots lower. That's implied.
Clearly, I am in the minority here. Okay, so where are you guys thinking about putting it?
I would like it under Terradigma.
I'm fine with that.
I mean, I wanted it above Terranigma personally, but
I mean, I haven't played Terra Nigma, so I don't really care, quite frankly.
I mean, Terra Nigma also has some issues with it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I'm split because Terra Nigma is more in like to my tastes, right? So, which is why when it's like so I think I would put it. I mean, I feel weird for saying that's the reason why I put it below Terra Nigma, but I don't know.
So am I just completely outvoted on the Xenoblade X thing? Like,
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
no,
I
one
think
thinks,
so.
no one thinks Xenoblade X is better than this game?
I enjoyed Xenoblade X for the good parts of it, but there are a lot of problems. Way more problems than in Grand Theft Auto 4.
I don't know why with
We always talk about the gameplay being key. The gameplay is shit.
I think
The game does not play well.
No, but
Grand
I mean,
Theft
but you're
Auto?
also a guy that
Grand Theft Auto 4, yeah.
I mean, the driving was the only thing that was kind of iffy, and then I got
I
used
think
to it
the
after a
whole
while.
game
yeah.
is just
When you
kinda,
get
like,
the good cars later on,
sluggish
it's
and,
fine.
Yeah, but even with the shitty cards, I found a way to compensate with it. You just kind of get used to how shitty they are. And,
Yeah.
that's how it
Is
is.
that a good thing?
And well, no, I mean, I think it's intentional, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's intentional, but I don't
In
like
real
it.
life, you get used to driving shitty
Oh, okay,
cars.
so like...
Well, no, I wouldn't make
You
that
describe
argument.
it as a simulation genre.
Art imitates life.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this too. I think actually, I think I'm gonna put it above Terra Nigma. Now that I think about it, and the reason why is Brandon, I know you love the Red Dead Redemption multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of similar sort of fun, like cops and robbers and other game modes that were added in GTA 4 as multiplayer modes that I did enjoy a lot actually, and and I think that's enough to put it above Terra Nigma in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, I even had a lot of fun even in just the sandbox mode in GTA 4. Just messing around. It was just really fun.
Yeah, there is more versatility to it than I was giving credit in that first statement. Now that I think about it.
Well, I think we've kind of settled on a consensus between Silent Hill 2 and Terra Nigma, which would be at number 67.
Oh, this is
So
where we at.
surrounding
Why
it
did you
is...
support else?
Damn.
Oh, well, I thought...
Because technically,
well,
it's you want it as low as you can get it. So you and Hills are tied. You and
I guess
Hills
that's
are
true, but also I don't particularly care. Like it's above. or
Yeah, I
below
mean, my
Terra
thing
Nigma.
with Terra Nigma is like, I'm having a hard time remembering that game, and I didn't even play it that long ago. I don't know why. I don't know. I just am having a hard time remembering every little facet about it.
Well, it is a fucking insane story.
There's a lot. You go through all of human history in Terra
Also, it
Nigma.
might just be you're getting old. You know, you.
Maybe, but I remember Grand Theft Auto 4 more.
Yeah, because it was
That's-
it was part of your younger years. You know, you vividly remember those, and
I guess.
now that
Wasn't
you're
that
old,
young.
When you're 80,
jaded
you're gonna be telling
adult,
your kids about
you
Grand
know,
Theft Auto 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I will. And Grand Theft Auto 5 probably too.
Where nowadays we don't have enough brain space to remember what happened yesterday. You know.
When I'm 80, Grand Theft Auto 6 will be 2 years old.
Probably, yeah. I mean, again, I'm fine with it going above, so that would be 3. So, unless someone wants to strongly tell me that it should go below.
No, I don't care.
Okay, all right, yeah. So number 67, it is. So surrounding that is The Missing, J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories, Silent Hill 2, Grand Theft Auto 4, Terra Nigma, and Star Fox 64, which is now at number 69, by the way. Congratulations to
Nice.
Star Fox.
64 kind of looks like a 9.
I remember when it was at number 64.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, see, I remember stuff.
Okay, Grandpa. Well, who wants the final word?
I'll take it.
Yeah, Will doesn't get it super often.
We'll take it. In the meantime, did you know you can find us every week? We do this podcast every single Monday. We also do the Game Club every other Thursday. The upcoming game is Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Adventure or Adventures?
Adventure.
Singular adventure.
Only one he's had.
Look forward to that episode. It's gonna, that game is a contentious game to say the least. It is the black sheep of a beloved franchise, so that'll be
Probably
a fun
gonna
listen.
go below Xenoblade Chronicles X. Get ready.
All right, well, got some spoilers going on, but okay. So look forward to that. We are on iTunes. We are pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. So just search our Jump Up Supercast on your podcast feed of choice. Otherwise, the best place to follow us is on Twitter, twitter.com/jumpupsupercast. That's where you can find out when we got new podcasts going up. You can find out when we're streaming. You can find out when we have to cancel because of the coronavirus. A lot of, that's the place to be. Now, more than ever, is the time where you need to follow us to find updates about us, So be sure to follow us there. We also have a Patreon. We want to thank you if you got to the end of the episode, and if you like what we do, and you want to throw in $1, throw in $5, we'd very much appreciate it. Patreon.com/jumpupsupercast, I assume. I'm not really sure. No one's correcting me, so I'm going to guess that's true. Otherwise, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, just search Jump Up Supercast. Will, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you just talked about the world right now. Stressful, anxious, right? Contentious. All words that I would use to describe the last week in what I've seen. Hey, man, obviously, Animal Crossing is coming out, right? And you know what I think the thing that I learned from Animal Crossing is? Animal Crossing is a game that you just do because you do these little activities, you do these little things, because sometimes little actions of self-care make you feel better. Right? Taking care of this town makes you feel better because it's just little actionable things you can do. And take that, put it in your own life, right? Make sure to look out for number one for yourself. Take all the precautions you need, but also make sure your mental well-being's good as well, because who knows how this coronavirus stuff is going to go. It'll get wild before it'll get better, probably. But it will get better eventually, and you got to be there for the other side. So make sure to keep track of your mental health as well as your physical, and be good.